Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Caden Kubler and welcome to Caden's Corner. We have a massive week of college football. Week 7 did not disappoint and Week 8 might be even better, but an underrated matchup that I'm looking at in the Big Ten is Nebraska traveling on the road to number 16 Indiana, which should be a great game in the Big Ten. You have Nebraska, who's 5-1, looking for a big-time bounce-back year under Matt Rhule, and you look at this Indiana team. I don't think a lot of people expected this early success from Curt Cignetti, who came over from JMU, but this Indiana team has had a lot of success early on, and there's a lot of hype and anticipation around this game. And both of these teams are on the come-up right now. You have Matt Rhule in year 2 at Nebraska. We know how he's able to turn around college football programs, what he did at Temple, what he did at Baylor, and now we're seeing him do the exact same thing at Nebraska as they're 5-1 as they went into this bye week here in Indiana under Curt Cignetti, off to a tremendous start, 6-0 with some nice wins in the Big Ten. Northwestern, Maryland, UCLA, they are flying through their schedule. They had a big time bye week as well, so both of these teams are going to be rested coming into this game that could be pivotal for the college football playoffs. You look at the Big Ten, you have your Oregon, your Penn State, and your Ohio State, but I think there's one more team that could really make a push for that number 4 wild card spot out of the Big Ten. You could see a team like in Indiana. We thought USC might be there. They've lost a few in a row. Potentially Nebraska, maybe Illinois. Michigan's really fallen off, but you're going to have probably 3 or 4 teams out of the Big Ten that make it. We know that Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon will make it, but this Nebraska-Indiana game could have massive implications on a potential college football playoff spot. Let's break this game down. Let's start with the Nebraska Cornhuskers here. Year 2 under Matt Rhule. He's done a tremendous job so far. They had that one loss, that little stumble against Illinois a few weeks ago, where they were pretty much leading the entire game and would end up choking it in typical Nebraska fashion late. But I think they built off that game. Matt Rhule talked about it, but coming into this year, everybody was saying Nebraska has a really easy schedule. They have a good defense. If this Dylan Raiola kid can live up to some of the hype that everybody's talking about, this Nebraska team has a legitimate shot to be 7-0 by the time they go on the road at Ohio State. And could this Nebraska team win 9 to 10 games? Well, they tripped, they stumbled against Illinois, and I think they did a great job of bouncing back. They beat Purdue. This defense showed up. The defense really got exposed against Illinois, but they picked it back up against Purdue. They picked it back up against Rutgers. And this offense has really been the bright spot of this team. Everybody knew coming into this year that this defense was tremendous under Tony White, the defensive coordinator for the Cornhuskers. He had multiple head coaching opportunities, but he decided to stay, felt that Matt Rhule was building something very big, and I think it was a great decision for him to do that. And this defense has been tremendous this year, and this Nebraska team, everybody knew that the defense would be great, but how would Dylan Raiola and this offense do? Because their offense was one of the worst in college football last year and was a big reason why they lost so many close games and didn't make a bowl game. But this defense has been great this year. Dylan Raiola has been this true freshman that everybody's looking across college football and really being like, this kid is going to be a stud for a while. But you look at what this defense is doing. They're a top 10 unit in the country. They're currently giving up the 7th fewest points per game, the 13th fewest yards per game. They're inside of the top 10 of the fewest rushing yards per game. This Nebraska team is physical. They have 2 big defensive linemen in Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher that tear it up and make it so hard to run the ball against them. And you have guys on the outside like Sayer Wright and Tommy Hill that make it very tough to throw against this team. So this defense is really well balanced, and that's why having an offense finally with Dylan Raiola that can complement them can show what this Nebraska team can be at their peak. And for Indiana, they're really balanced on both sides of the ball. We see this massive turnaround that Curt Cignetti's had with this program, and it starts on the offensive side of the ball with Curtis Rourke. We saw him transfer over from Miami of Ohio. He's now in his 6th year of college football, and he's having an explosive season. He has 14 touchdown passes to only 2 interceptions. He has been very accurate, and he's leading one of the highest flying offenses in all of college football. You look at this offense, they have the 2nd most points per game at 47.5. They're only 0.2 behind Miami, which would be number 1 in the country. They have the 4th most total yards per game, and they're inside of the top 10 total passing yards per game. Both of these teams are going to have big-time challenges coming into this game. When Nebraska lost to Illinois, that was a team that could throw the ball and run the ball at a very high level. Every other opponent that they've seen hadn't been able to do that. Colorado, they could throw the ball at a really high level, but they couldn't run the football. Illinois was able to do both, and that really exploited this Nebraska defense. For Indiana, I think they're going to be tested in a few different ways. We know that this team loves to throw the football, and they're really good at doing so. But if Nebraska is able to take away that pass, can they consistently run the football against this tough front? Another big thing is you go through the schedule of Indiana. They beat Florida International, Western Illinois, they went on the road and beat UCLA, they beat Charlotte, beat Maryland, and beat Northwestern on the road. They haven't won against an opponent that's over 500. UCLA's 1-5, Maryland is 3-3, and Northwestern is 3-3. They currently don't have one win against a team with a winning record, but they're really going to be tested. This Nebraska team is no joke. If the Cornhuskers had taken care of business and beaten Illinois, they would probably be a top 15 team in the country right now, and they're right outside of the top 25 right now, and Indiana knows that they have their hands full. Now, in terms of picking this game, Nebraska comes in as a 6.5-point underdog. Indiana's going to have the home field advantage. They're 16th in the country, and they have a lot of hype around them. Both of these teams had much needed bye weeks midway through the year coming into this game. But looking at this Nebraska team, I don't think they're getting enough credit for how good this defense has truly been. I know I listed off all of those stats, how they're virtually top 10 in every single metric in points and yards. But let's not forget, this is the only defense in college football that has not given up a rushing touchdown. They are super physical at the line of scrimmage. Tony White has just done such a phenomenal job with this defense. I think they are battle tested. They know the type of pain that they went through last year with all of those close losses, and they know they're right there. If Nebraska wins this game, they will be 6-1, and they will be near the top 15 of the rankings, in my opinion. They haven't beat a ranked team since 2016, if you can believe it, but I think Nebraska finally gets it done against Indiana on the road. They had that tough loss against Illinois, but I think they're so battle tested up to this point. Dylan Raiola has been such a bright spot of this team. He had his worst game the last week coming into the bye week. I think that's going to fuel him, fuel this offense. They're finally running the ball at a high level. They know that back rotation that they want to use. And I think with Indiana, it's great that they're 6-0. It's great that they're 16th in the country. But when I look at this schedule, it's hard to find a team that is average to above average that can't go 6-0. I know they're putting up a lot of points per game. I know they're putting up some impressive stats, but at the end of the day, you should be doing this against these inferior opponents. It's time to see what they can do when they face a real defense that's going to shut down this line of scrimmage. It's going to shut down the run game, and is going to force them to be one-dimensional and only throw the ball. Because this Nebraska team doesn't need to sit back in coverage. They've faced better passing attacks than this Indiana team. This defensive line is so good that they can get after the quarterback. If Nebraska can impose its will early on this offensive line, if the defensive line can shut down the run and force Indiana to drop back and pass, they should have no problem winning this game. Colorado is a great passing team. They obviously have Shedeur, Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn. They have more explosive weapons and a better passing attack than Indiana. Nebraska just needs to come in there and shut down the line of scrimmage. I have Nebraska walking into Indiana, pulling off a huge upset and getting the Cornhuskers back in the college football playoff talks. I'm Caden Kubler, and that's my take.